Hey guys, Mike from Bokeh Film Studios here to talk about the brand new A7iii. I don't really do these unboxing things very well, so I'll just... Whoa. I don't think it's supposed to come out of the box that way, but before I get too far into this video, I wanted to give a big shout out to Row Photo, Video, and Audio here in Rochester, New York for actually having this camera. B&H didn't, and so I'm grateful that they were able to set me up. So if you watch any of these videos, you know that I don't just look at the specs of the camera and all the gadgets and the cool flashy things. I really look at this from a functional standpoint, and I ask myself the question, is this a better piece of equipment that makes my job as a wedding filmmaker easier? So with that in mind, I actually have 4 things that I think make this a better camera than even the Sony A7S II. I know it kills me to say that because that's the camera that I have lived with for the last 2 years. This past weekend, I shot an entire wedding on this guy. Of course, I also brought my Sony A7S II and my A6500. I now have a 3-camera setup for weddings and I love it. So for starters, the image quality. The image quality, I didn't notice a tremendous difference. Sony will tell you that the A7iii is technically a better camera visually, and that's really because of the way that they built the camera. It's just different. The A7S II is a 12.4 megapixel camera, which sounds really, really low, but Sony built that specifically to have bigger pixels for better low light capabilities. The Sony A7iii has 24 megapixels, completely redesigned for this body, and it's really supposed to be something that is great for that image quality. Now, I've watched a ton of videos comparing the A7S II with the A7 Mark III in low light capabilities, and truth be told, the difference is minimal in my opinion. I think maybe you should check it out for yourself, but honestly, to me, that is sort of a tie. Additionally, if you are thinking of using this camera for photography, it is just by far a better camera for photography than the A7S II. But typically you're not buying these cameras for photography. Some of the other things about the image of this camera compared to the A7S II, the first thing is you'll notice that there is 15 stops of high dynamic range that Sony says about this camera. And for anyone that shoots in log or in a cine profile, a little bit more flat profile like I shoot in, that actually makes a world of difference to you when you are shooting and then go and do your color correction and color grading in post. Another thing about the capabilities in the image in the cameras is that both the A7S II and the A7 Mark III will shoot 120 frames per second in full HD. The biggest difference is that the A7S II will crop and the A7iii will not. Okay, another issue for me that is a really big deal is the battery life. You've seen me talk about this in my Mavic Air comparison with the Mavic Pro and sort of my gripe with that whole battery process. Well, the truth is the A7S II's batteries are terrible. I go through 5 of them in the course of a day, and I also have to charge 3 more right in the middle of the day while I'm shooting a wedding. It is super annoying. It's actually a little bit, there's a little bit of anxiety there. I don't know why I haven't just bought more, but there's a little bit of anxiety like, oh my gosh, if I don't get these batteries charged, I'm not going to have battery life for the camera that I need to shoot in. But I am so happy to tell you that Sony, for the A7 III, and they also did this in a camera before, but they redesigned their batteries. They're huge. They're enormous. If you compare them to the A7S II battery, I mean, it's night and day different. It's a huge battery compared to the old style battery. I shot on this camera the entire day with 2 batteries. That was going between 4K and 1080p, 60 frames, 120 frames. But the entire day I shot and only used 2 batteries. And to be completely honest, I actually took out the first battery when it was at 10%, And by the end of the day, I took out the last battery and it was at 25%. So I still had more room to go, and that was a 12-hour day. The battery life is crazy. So the battery life gives the A7iii a huge advantage for wedding filmmakers, especially run and gun, solo shoot filmmakers that just don't have the time to charge batteries or invest in 50 batteries that you're just gonna throw in a bag and keep with you all day. It's just not gonna work. This is amazing, and I hope it's a battery that they continue to use when they come out with a new version of the A7S. Another feature that I think actually sets this camera apart from the A7S II, and it's a big one, it is autofocus. I don't use autofocus all the time, but I have to use autofocus when I am on my Zhiyun crane, and there's other moments where I like to use autofocus just simply because it can be convenient. The autofocus is absolutely tremendous in this camera. I've seen tons of videos that compare the two just by visually looking at how quickly someone can approach the subject. There's actually even settings that will speed up the autofocus and how it adjusts. And it's not just my opinion, this is actually based on technology that Sony has come up with and designed specifically for this camera. It has 693 phase detection points in order for that autofocus to just work phenomenally. In contrast, the A7S II has 169 phase detection points. So you can see a huge difference in how quickly that autofocus responds and just how clear and sharp your images can be with minimal effort, which I think is something that we're all trying and striving to maintain and find easier ways to do things when we are run and gun filmmaking. The last thing I really want to talk about is the functionality of some of the aspects of this camera. For starters, you'll notice that they actually put the record button right here. And this is fascinating because I actually set my custom settings on the A7S II. Right here is a button that I think is C3. It's a custom setting that you can set, and I set that on my A7S II for the record button. The old version had the record button like over here, something that just, it didn't make sense. You had to like go like this to, it was stupid. So I'm actually really happy that Sony took a play out of us, the consumers' playbook, and noticed that people were just setting the record button here. It might be a small thing, but little things like that drive you nuts when you're doing it all the time. Another thing, and not really something I'm probably gonna use all the time, there's dual SD card slots. I think that's great if you're constantly shooting in 4K, but I buy 256 gig cards. I really don't run out of storage at any one given time, even if I'm shooting an entire wedding. But it's there, it's good to have. And one of the things that they improved that I think is absolutely tremendous for wedding filmmakers is that in the A7S II, if you shoot in 4K, you'll notice that the LCD screen dims. I think that's to conserve battery. Also, they were having a lot of issues with overheating in the A7S II. In this camera, you have the ability to boost that LCD brightness way back up to all the other settings. That is huge when you're shooting on a sunny day or situation where there's a lot of light and it's hard to see this tiny little screen and basically film an entire movie, which is the wedding films that you're producing. Well, that's my review of the A7 Mark III for wedding filmmakers. I'm going to create another video that kind of goes into my edit, maybe my custom buttons and settings and profile and all that other stuff, but that is a video for another day. If you enjoyed this review, I hope that you like this video, comment below, and of course subscribe. We have so much that's going on here at Bokeh Film Studios. This wedding season is going to be unlike anything we've ever experienced. We'd love to have you along for the ride. Thanks so much and happy filmmaking.